I still remember the exact moment I pressed the block button on my mother's number. My 6-year-old son, Liam, was asleep beside me in the first-class cabin, his fever finally broken his small hand clutching mine. Outside the window, the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly below us, and for the first time in 28 years, I felt free. But let me tell you how I got here, because the road to this moment was paved with betrayal-frozen tears and a property deed that would change everything. Before I continue, if you have ever felt invisible in your own family, if you have ever been the one who gave everything and got nothing in return, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories of people who finally said enough. And comment below if you think family loyalty should ever have limits, because what I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you thought you knew about unconditional love. Let me take you back to where it all began. I was always the overlooked daughter. My sister Leah was the golden child, 2 years older, prettier, according to my parents' standards, and somehow always deserving of more. Growing up in our middle-class home in suburban Denver, I learned early that love in our family was conditional and heavily rationed. Leah got the new clothes while I wore hand-me-downs. She got piano lessons while I got lectures about being grateful for what I had. When she crashed Dad's car at 17, they bought her a new one. When I got a full scholarship to college, they asked why I could not have gone somewhere closer to home to save them the trouble. But I told myself it did not matter. I worked 3 jobs through college, graduated top of my class in finance, and built a career that would have made any parent proud. By 28, I was a senior analyst at a wealth management firm, pulling in a salary that would have shocked my parents if they had ever bothered to ask. I wore sharp suits, managed portfolios worth millions, and had a reputation for being ruthlessly good with numbers. Cold, some colleagues called me. Focused, I preferred to say. The truth was, I had learned to protect myself by building walls so high that nothing could hurt me. Then came Liam. His father was a mistake I made during a particularly lonely Christmas 6 years ago, a relationship that lasted 3 months before the guy vanished when I told him I was pregnant. I raised Liam alone, and he became my entire world. Those big brown eyes, that gap-toothed smile, the way he called me mama, and wrapped his little arms around my neck like I was his superhero. For him, I would have moved mountains. For him, I actually tried to rebuild bridges with my family. That was my first mistake. When Liam turned 3, I made the decision to reconnect with my parents. I thought maybe grandchildren would soften them, that blood would finally mean something. I was wrong, but I was also desperate for my son to have family, to have what I never had. So I swallowed my pride and showed up to Sunday dinners, endured the comparisons to Leah's life, and pretended not to notice when my mother fawned over Leah's designer handbags, while ignoring the educational toys I brought for Liam. Leah had married a middle manager named Derek, and they lived in a rented townhouse decorated to look like something from a luxury magazine. She posted constantly on social media about her perfect life, her perfect marriage, her perfect taste. What she did not post about was the mountain of credit card debt, the marriage counseling sessions, or the fact that Derek was 1 bad quarter away from losing his job. I knew because I was good with numbers, and I could read between the lines of her increasingly desperate hints about needing to borrow money. My parents, Martha and Joe, were no better off. Dad had retired from his job as an insurance adjuster 5 years ago, and Mom had never worked outside the home. They lived in the house I grew up, in a modest 3-bedroom ranch-style home, in a neighborhood that had seen better days. What I did not know until much later was that they had refinanced the house twice to fund Leah's wedding and her various failed business ventures. By the time I came back into their lives, they were drowning in debt, the bank was circling, and foreclosure was a very real possibility. That is when I made my second mistake. I saved them. I did it quietly through a trust company I had set up for investment purposes. Elmbrook Trust purchased the house from the bank, paid off their debts, and set them up with a sweetheart deal. They could stay in the house for a nominal rent of $500 a month, far below market rate, with the understanding that this was family. Helping family. I never told them it was me. I let them think some investment company had bought the property and they had gotten incredibly lucky with a generous landlord. I thought if they knew it was me, their pride would never allow them to accept the help. I thought I was being kind. What I did not realize was that I had just handed them a loaded gun. For the next 3 years, I played the role of the disappointing daughter while secretly being their financial savior. I attended holiday dinners where Leah bragged about her latest purchases while I stayed quiet about my success. I bit my tongue when Dad made jokes about me being a single mother, about how I probably could not even afford to buy Liam decent clothes. I smiled when Mum suggested I should try to look more put together, like Leah, maybe then I could find a husband. Meanwhile, I was crushing it at work. I had been promoted to director. My investment portfolio was thriving, and I had started building serious wealth. I bought a beautiful condo in downtown Denver with mountain views, enrolled Liam in a private school, and started planning for our future. I traveled for work frequently, always first class, always staying at nice hotels. But I kept this life completely separate from my family. As far as they knew, I was barely scraping by, working some boring office job and living paycheck to paycheck. This double life continued until last Christmas. I had planned a trip to visit my parents for the holidays, something I did more for Liam than for myself. He loved the idea of grandparents, even if those grandparents barely acknowledged his existence. I booked business class tickets for both of us, a rare splurge that I justified because Liam loved looking out the airplane window, and I wanted to make the trip special. The week before Christmas, Liam caught a cold that turned into a fever. I debated cancelling the trip, but he insisted he wanted to see Grandma and Grandpa. So I packed extra medicine, made sure we had everything we needed, and headed to the airport on December 23rd. Denver International Airport was chaos that night. A massive snowstorm was rolling in, flights were being delayed and cancelled left and right. And the terminal was packed with desperate travelers trying to get home for the holidays. Liam was burning up with fever, clinging to my coat, and I was focused on getting him through security so we could find a quiet gate where he could rest before our flight. When we finally reached the check-in counter for our 6 p.m. departure, the agent's face told me something was wrong before she even spoke. She typed on her keyboard, frowned, typed some more, then looked up at me with professional sympathy. "Your reservation has been cancelled," she said, "and the refund of $2,000 has been processed back to the card on file." I felt my stomach drop. "That is impossible," I said. "I booked these tickets 3 months ago. There must be a mistake." She showed me her screen. The cancellation had been processed that morning. The refund was already being sent to a secondary card on the account, a card I barely remembered existed. It was an old credit card I had added my mother's name to years ago, back when I first started my career, and thought having her as an authorized user would help her credit score. I had never removed her from the account because I never used that card anymore. "I will just rebook us," I said, pulling out my primary credit card. The agent nodded and started typing, but then her face changed again. "I am sorry, ma'am, but this card is being declined." "That is impossible," I repeated. "I know for a fact that card has a $50,000 limit and no balance." She tried again, still declined. She suggested I call my bank. While she helped the next customer, I stepped aside and called the number on the back of my card. After navigating the automated system, I finally reached a representative who told me my card had been reported stolen that morning and had been locked for security purposes. "I never reported it stolen," I said, my voice rising. "Who reported it?" The representative paused. "It says here that Martha Reynolds, an authorized user on the account, reported the card missing." My mother had reported my own credit card stolen to lock me out of my money. I tried my backup cards, all locked, all reported stolen by authorized users. I had foolishly added over the years, thinking I was building trust and helping with credit scores. In reality, I had given them the keys to sabotage me. Liam tugged on my sleeve. "Mama, I do not feel good." His face was flush sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool airport air. "I know, baby," I said, kneeling down to his level. "We are going to figure this out, okay?" That is when my phone buzzed. A text message from my mother. No words, just a photo. The image loaded slowly on the airport Wi-Fi, and when it finally appeared, I felt something crack inside my chest. It was a picture of my family gathered around the dining room table. My mother, my father Leah, and her husband Derek, all smiling at the camera. The table was laden with food. A perfectly golden roasted turkey mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, all the traditional Christmas dishes. But what caught my eye was what Leah was holding up to the camera. A brand new designer handbag, black leather with gold hardware, the kind that cost several $1,000s. Then came the text message, and every word was a knife. We used your plane tickets to get Leah an early Christmas present. You are used to walking everywhere anyway, you failure. Do not bother coming home and embarrassing this family. We do not need your pathetic presence ruining our holiday. I read it twice. 3 times. Liam was leaning against me, his small body radiating heat, sick and exhausted. Around us, families were rushing to their gates, children were laughing, couples were holding hands, and I was standing in the middle of Denver International Airport, locked out of my own money with a feverish 6-year-old and a family that had just stolen from me to buy my sister a purse. I did not cry. Something else happened instead. Something cold and precise clicked into place in my mind. I thought about the house about Elmbrook Trust, about the property deed that had my name on it. I thought about 3 years of playing small, of letting them treat me like garbage while I secretly kept a roof over their heads. I thought about my son sick and abandoned because his grandmother thought a handbag was more important than her grandson's well-being. I pulled up my contacts and scrolled to a name I had not called in months. Harrison Blackwood, a real estate attorney I had worked with when setting up the trust. He specialized in property law evictions and what he liked to call creative solutions to difficult situations. I had used him several times for clients, and I knew he was ruthless, efficient, and available 24/7 for the right price. He answered on the second ring. "Lucia," he said, his voice smooth and professional. "I was not expecting to hear from you on Christmas Eve. I need to activate something," I said, my voice steady, despite the rage burning in my chest. "Remember that property we discussed, the one under Elmbrook Trust? The family house," he confirmed. "What do you need?" "I want them out," I said. "All of them. I want to execute my rights as the property owner, and I want to do it immediately. They are 6 months behind on rent. I want a formal eviction notice drawn up tonight." There was a pause. "Lucia, it is Christmas week. This is going to be complicated, and it is going to be ugly." "I know," I said. "That is exactly what I want." He heard something in my voice that made him stop arguing. "Give me 2 hours," he said. "I will have the paperwork ready and a team assembled. This is going to cost you." "Whatever it takes," I said. "Bill me." I hung up and looked down at Liam. He was barely standing now, leaning heavily against my leg. I scooped him up, and he wrapped his arms around my neck with a small whimper. "I am sorry, Mama," he whispered. "I know you wanted to go to Grandma's house." "We are going, baby," I told him, my voice soft, but my resolve iron hard. "We are absolutely going." I carried Liam to the airport medical clinic, where a kind nurse took his temperature and gave him children's ibuprofen. While we waited for the medication to bring his fever down, I made calls. I rented a luxury SUV from the airport, the kind with heated seats, and enough space for Liam to stretch out in the back. I booked us a hotel room nearby for the night so Liam could rest, and I started planning. The next morning, December 24th, Christmas Eve. I woke up early. Liam's fever had broken overnight, and though he was still tired, he was feeling much better. I let him sleep a bit longer while I made more calls. Harrison had come through. The eviction notice was ready, the legal grounds were solid, and he had a plan. Around noon, I loaded Liam into the SUV. I had bought him warm clothes from the hotel gift shop, nothing fancy, but comfortable. I dressed myself in jeans and a simple sweater, deliberately downplaying my appearance. I wanted to look exactly like what they thought I was struggling, broke, defeated. The drive to my parents' house took 40 minutes. The neighborhood looked shabbier than I remembered, with houses that needed paint and yards that needed care. My parents' house sat on a corner lot, the the front lawn covered in patchy snow. I could see Christmas lights twinkling in the windows, and through the sheer curtains I could make out movement inside. I parked the SUV 2 blocks away out of sight. This was important. I wanted them to think I had walked just like they had suggested. I wanted them to believe their cruelty had landed exactly as intended. "Come on, sweetie," I said to Liam, bundling him into his coat. "We are going to walk the rest of the way." "Why, Mama?" he asked, confused. "Because sometimes you have to let people think they have won," I said, "even though I know you do not understand that yet." We walked through the snow-covered streets as the winter sun began to set. The neighborhood was quiet families, already gathering inside for Christmas Eve. Liam held my hand occasionally coughing, and I felt my resolve harden with every step. This child, this beautiful innocent boy, deserved so much better than grandparents who saw him as an inconvenience. When we reached the house, I could hear laughter and music from inside. I did not knock. I tried the door, found it unlocked, and walked in. The scene before me was exactly what I expected, and somehow still managed to shock me. The living room was decorated with expensive ornaments and a massive Christmas tree. The dining table visible from the entryway was set with fine china I had never seen before, probably bought on credit. And there, gathered in the living room, were my parents and Leah, with her husband. Leah was showing off her new handbag to Mom, both of them cooing over it like it was the most precious thing in the world. Dad was pouring whiskey for Derek, both men laughing at some joke. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine, a perfect Christmas tableau. Then they saw me. The laughter stopped. Leah's mouth fell open. My mother's face went from surprise to annoyance in a fraction of a second. "What are you doing here?" Mom said, her voice sharp. "I told you not to come." I stood in the doorway. Liam pressed against my side and said nothing. I just looked at them, these people who were supposed to be my family. "Oh my God," Leah said, her voice dripping with disgust. "You actually walked here in the snow. That is pathetic even for you." Dad set down his drink and walked toward me. His face was red, whether from alcohol or anger I could not tell. "You were told you were not welcome," he said. "You are embarrassing yourself. Go home, Lucia." "This is home," I said quietly. "Or it used to be." "Not anymore," Mum snapped. "You made your choices. You do not get to show up here and ruin Christmas because you are a failure who could not afford plane tickets." "You stole my plane tickets," I said, still calm. "You reported my credit card stolen to lock me out of my own money so you could buy Leah a purse. That purse cost more than your entire wardrobe," Leah said, smirking. "Mum and Dad wanted to get me something special." "Sorry that offends you, but we cannot all be broke single mothers." Liam shifted beside me and Leah's eyes landed on him. "Ugh, and you brought the kid. Please tell me he is not sick. I do not want him breathing his germs on my new bag." "He has a fever," I said. "He has been sick for 2 days. That is why getting on a plane was so important. I needed to get him somewhere warm where he could rest." "Well, he cannot rest here," Mum said. She walked to the hall closet and pulled out an old threadbare blanket that smelled like mildew. She tossed it at me. "You can sleep in the garage if you want. The living room is for Leah's dog." She pointed to a small designer dog bed in the corner, where a tiny yapping Pomeranian sat wearing a Christmas sweater. "You are giving us the garage," I said, still processing. "You are putting a 6-year-old sick child in an unheated garage. Maybe it will teach you some humility," Dad said. "You show up here uninvited. You get what you get. Be grateful we are not kicking you out entirely." That was when Liam made a small sound, a whimper of hunger. We had not eaten since breakfast, and I could see a plate of cookies on the coffee table. Before I could stop him, he took a step toward them, reaching for a cookie. "Do not even think about it," Leah shrieked. "Those are imported Italian biscotti. They cost $18 a box." Liam jerked his hand back, startled, but his elbow caught the edge of the coffee table. One cookie tumbled off the plate and landed on the carpet. A pristine, cream-colored Persian rug that definitely had not been there the last time I visited. The room went silent. Leah stared at the cookie on her rug like Liam had just committed murder. "You little brat," she hissed. "Do you have any idea how much that rug cost?" "That is a hand-knotted Persian rug I bought for Mum's birthday. It cost $6,000. She lunged at Liam. And before I could react, she slapped his hand hard enough that the sound echoed through the room. Liam cried out and stumbled backward. Leah was not done. She grabbed his shoulder and shoved him, and my 6-year-old son fell hard onto the hardwood floor. "You filthy little bastard," Leah screamed. "You ruined everything you touched, just like your mother." Time seemed to slow down. I saw my son on the floor, tears streaming down his face, his hand red from where she had hit him. I saw my sister standing over him, her face twisted with rage over a cookie and a rug. I saw my parents standing there making no move to help, no move to stop her. And I saw red. I moved faster than I knew I could. I crossed the room, scooped Liam up with one arm, and with my other hand, I slapped Leah across the face with every ounce of strength I had. The sound was like a gunshot. Leah staggered back, her hand flying to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock. The room went completely silent except for Liam's soft crying against my shoulder. "You put your hands on my child," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You hit my 6-year-old son over a cookie." "A cookie." "She hit me," Leah wailed, turning to our parents. "Mom, Dad, she hit me. Call the police." I was still holding Liam, rubbing his back, whispering that he was okay, that Mama had him. But I kept my eyes locked on my family. "Yes," Dad said, his face purple with rage. "We are calling the police. You just assaulted your sister. You broke into our home and attacked a member of this family." "Broke in," I said. "The door was unlocked." "You were not invited," Mum spat. "That is trespassing. That is illegal entry. Joe, call 911. We are having her arrested for assault and unlawful entry." Dad pulled out his phone, his hands shaking with anger or adrenaline. "I am calling right now," he said. "You are going to jail, Lucia, and they are going to take that kid away from you. Maybe he will end up with a real family." That threat, that mention of taking Liam away, should have scared me. Instead, it made me smile. A cold, calculating smile that made my father pause mid-dial. "Please do," I said calmly. "Call the police, I insist." Something in my tone made him hesitate, but he was too angry to think straight. He finished dialing and put the phone on speaker. We all listened as the call connected, as the dispatcher answered, as my father reported a home invasion and assault in progress. The dispatcher said officers were on their way. The call ended. We stood there in tense silence, Leah still holding her reddening cheek. My parents glaring at me with vindictive satisfaction, and me holding my son completely calm. "You are going to regret this," Mum said. "You are going to lose everything." "No," I said softly. "You are." 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. Officer Martinez and Officer Chen, according to their name tags, both looking tired and annoyed at having to deal with a domestic dispute on Christmas Eve. Dad launched into his story immediately, talking over everyone, gesturing wildly. "This woman broke into our home," he said. "She attacked my daughter. We want her arrested and removed from the property immediately." Officer Martinez held up a hand. "Sir, please calm down." He looked at me, at Liam in my arms, then back at my father. What is your side of this?" I set Liam down gently on the couch, making sure he was comfortable before turning to address the officers. "My name is Lucia Reynolds," I said calmly. "I did not break into this home. I walked through an unlocked door, and I did strike my sister, but only after she physically assaulted my 6-year-old son." "That is a lie," Leah shrieked. "I barely touched the brat." "You slapped him and pushed him to the ground," I said evenly. "Hard enough that he fell. Over a cookie landing on your rug." Officer Chen knelt down to Liam's level. "Hey there, buddy," he said gently. "Are you okay? Did someone hurt you?" Liam nodded, his eyes still wet with tears. "Aunt Leah hit me," he whispered, "and pushed me down. My hand still hurts." He held up his small hand, still showing the red marks from where Leah had slapped him. The 2 officers exchanged a look. Officer Martinez turned to my father. "Sir, regardless of the circumstances, striking a child is a serious matter. We are going to need to take statements from everyone." "Forget the kid," Dad said. "We want her out of our house. This is our property and she is trespassing." "Actually," I said, reaching into my purse, "that is not accurate." I pulled out a folder I had prepared that morning. Inside were copies of the property deed, the trust documents, and the rental agreement my parents had been paying into for 3 years. I handed them to Officer Martinez. He opened the folder and began reading. His eyebrows rose. He showed the documents to Officer Chen, who also looked surprised. "Ma'am," Officer Martinez said slowly, looking at my parents. "Can you explain your relationship to this property?" "We own this house," Mum said confidently. "We have lived here for 35 years. That woman is our daughter, and she is not welcome here." Officer Martinez turned the deed so they could see it. "According to this property deed, this house is owned by Elmbrook Trust Properties. And according to this trust document, Elmbrook Trust Properties is owned and operated by Lucia Reynolds." He looked at me. "Is that you, Ma?" Yes," I said. "I purchased this property 5 years ago when it was in foreclosure. I have allowed my parents to live here as renters for a nominal fee of $500 per month. According to my records, they are currently 6 months behind on rent, owing $3,000. The room went so quiet you could hear the Christmas music playing softly in the background. "That is impossible," Dad said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "We send rent to Elmbrook every month." "You send $500 to Elmbrook Trust," I confirmed, "which I own. And according to the rental agreement, you signed failure to pay rent for more than 3 months is grounds for eviction. You have not paid in 6 months. Mum's face had gone pale. "You are Elmbrook," she whispered. "I have been your landlord for 5 years," I said. "I bought this house to save you from losing it to the bank. I gave you an incredibly low rent because I thought I was helping family. But family does not steal from each other. Family does not lock someone out of their own bank accounts to buy designer purses. And family certainly does not put their hands on a 6-year-old child." Officer Martinez looked from me to my parents, clearly reassessing the entire situation. "So to be clear," he said, "you are the legal owner of this property, and these individuals are tenants who are behind on rent." "That is correct," I said, "and I would like them removed for violating the terms of their lease." "You cannot do this," Leah said, her voice rising to a shriek. "This is our home. Mom and Dad have lived here for decades. And I paid for it," I said simply. "The bank was going to foreclose. I stepped in and bought it. You have been living here because I allowed it. That arrangement is now terminated." Officer Chen cleared his throat. He said to me, "Eviction is a civil matter that typically requires court proceedings. We cannot just remove them tonight without a court order." "I understand," I said. I reached back into my purse and pulled out another document. "This is an emergency eviction notice filed this morning in county court and expedited due to evidence of property damage and threats to the owner's safety. My attorney, Mr. Harrison Blackwood, has already secured a preliminary hearing for tomorrow morning, December 25th. Officer Martinez took the document and scanned it. "This looks legitimate," he said. "But again, we cannot forcibly remove them until the court order is finalized." "I understand," I said. "I am not asking you to remove them tonight. I simply wanted to establish on the record who owns this property and who has the legal right to be here. However, as the property owner, I would like to secure the premises to prevent any further damage or theft of my assets." "Your assets," Mum said. "Everything in this house is ours." "Actually," I said, pulling out yet another document. "According to the itemized list of furnishings included in the purchase agreement, many of the major items in this house were part of the property sale. The washer-dryer, refrigerator, and several pieces of furniture are technically mine. Additionally, I have credit card statements showing that many recent purchases were made using credit cards where I am the primary account holder, and you are merely authorized users. That makes those items my property as well purchased without my permission." Officer Martinez was looking at me with something that might have been respect. "You came prepared," he said. "I work in finance," I replied. "I understand the importance of documentation." "This is insane," Dad said. "You cannot just take everything from us." "I am not taking anything," I said. "I am reclaiming what was already mine. You are the ones who have been living in my house using my credit and spending my money without permission. That is called theft." Leah was looking around the room like she was seeing it for the first time, probably calculating how much of her precious possessions were actually purchased with my money. Officer Chen spoke up. Folks, here is the situation as I see it. This is clearly a civil dispute that needs to be resolved in court. Ms. Reynolds has demonstrated that she is the property owner, which means she has certain rights. However, eviction cannot happen overnight. He turned to me. Ma'am, even with your court filings, the actual removal of tenants will take time. I understand, I said, but I do have some immediate concerns. As the property owner, I have the right to inspect and secure my property. I believe there may be unauthorized modifications and potential safety hazards that need to be addressed. What are you talking about, Mum said. I pulled out my phone and opened an app. Several years ago, when I first purchased the house, I had updated several systems. The thermostat, the electrical panel monitoring system, and the internet router were all smart devices that I could control remotely. My parents probably never even noticed, because everything had been working seamlessly. Until now. As the officers watched, I adjusted the settings on my phone. The house lights flickered once twice, then went dark. The heating system shut down with a noticeable click. Even the Wi-Fi router mounted in the basement powered off. What are you doing, Dad shouted. I am securing my property, I said calmly. As the owner, I have the right to control utilities and access to systems that I pay for. Turn it back on, Mom demanded. It is Christmas Eve. It is freezing outside. The temperature will not drop to dangerous levels immediately, I said. And you are welcome to leave if you are uncomfortable. Perhaps a hotel would be more suitable. We do not have money for a hotel, Leah said, and then immediately looked like she regretted admitting that. Perhaps you should have thought about that before spending $2,000 on a purse, I said. Officer Martinez stepped forward. Ms. Reynolds, while I understand your frustration, deliberately making the home uninhabitable could be seen as a violation of landlord-tenant laws. The home is not uninhabitable, I said. The structure is sound, there is running water, and the temperature will remain above freezing. I am simply not providing complimentary utilities to tenants who are 6 months behind on rent. That is within my rights. There was a long silence. Finally, Officer Chen said, "This is above our pay grade." He looked at my parents. "Folks, I strongly suggest you seek legal counsel." He turned to me. "Ms. Reynolds, I also suggest you work through the proper legal channels rather than taking matters into your own hands. I have an attorney and a court date," I said. "I am simply exercising my rights as a property owner in the meantime." The officers looked at each other clearly, wanting to be anywhere but here on Christmas Eve. They took statements from everyone, photographed the red mark on Liam's hand, and wrote up a report about the incident. Before they left, Officer Martinez handed me a card. "If you need to file a restraining order or press charges regarding the assault on your son, give us a call," he said quietly. "And for what it is worth, I am sorry you are dealing with this during the holidays." After the police left, I stood in the dark living room with my family. The only light came from the street lamps outside and the dying glow of the Christmas tree lights, which were running on battery backup. "You are a monster," Mum said. "How can you do this to your own family?" "I am not the one who stole plane tickets from a sick child," I said. "I am not the one who hit a 6-year-old. I am not the one who has been living rent-free in someone else's house while mocking them for being poor. I have been your safety net for 5 years, and you have been treating me like garbage. That ends now." "Where are we supposed to go?" Leah demanded. "That is not my problem," I said. "You are adults, figure it out." I picked up Liam, who had been quietly watching everything with wide eyes. I walked to the door, then turned back. "Oh, and one more thing," I said. "That rug Leah was so worried about. The $6,000 Persian rug, I checked the credit card statement. It was purchased on one of my cards, so technically it is my rug. I will be back to collect it along with several other items that were purchased without my authorization." "You cannot do this," Dad said, but his voice was weak now, defeated. "Watch me," I said. I walked out into this cold night with my son, leaving my family in the dark house. We got into the warm SUV and drove back to our hotel. Liam was quiet for a long time before he finally spoke. "Are we really going to take Aunt Leah's rug?" he asked. "We are going to take back a lot of things that belong to us," I told him. "Because sometimes being kind to people who hurt you just makes them hurt you more." I did not sleep much that night. Instead, I worked with Harrison over email and phone, preparing for the next phase. He had been busy. He had assembled a team, including a property recovery specialist, a locksmith, and a moving company that specialized in rapid asset removal. They were all on standby, waiting for my go-ahead. Christmas morning dawned cold and bright. While families across the country were opening presents and drinking hot chocolate, I was getting ready for war. I dressed Liam in his warmest clothes and took him to a friend's house, someone from work who had offered to watch him for the day. When I explained I was dealing with a family emergency, I did not give details, but she took one look at my face and just hugged me. "Go do what you need to do," she said. "Liam will be safe here." At 9 a.m., I met Harrison at a 24-hour diner near the courthouse. Even on Christmas, the courts had an emergency judge on duty for urgent matters. Harrison had pulled some strings and called in some favors to get us on the emergency docket. We went through the case one more time. The evidence was overwhelming. I had the deed, the purchase records, the trust documents, the rental agreement with their signatures, and bank records showing 6 months of non-payment. I had credit card statements showing thousands of dollars in unauthorized purchases, and I had the police report from last night documenting their admission that I owned the property and their assault on my son. "This is going to be fast," Harrison said. "The judge will likely grant the eviction order immediately, given the circumstances. But Lucia, are you sure you want to do this? On Christmas? This is scorched earth." "They left me and my sick child at the airport on Christmas Eve," I said. "They hit my son. They stole from me for years." "Yes, I am sure." The hearing lasted 20 minutes. My parents did not even show up, probably because they could not afford an attorney and did not realize how quickly things were moving. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, reviewed the evidence, asked me a few questions, and then signed the eviction order. "Granted," she said. "The property owner has demonstrated clear grounds for immediate eviction. The tenants have 72 hours to vacate the premises." "Your Honor," Harrison said smoothly, "given the evidence of asset theft and property damage, we request permission for immediate supervised asset recovery." The judge considered this. "Granted," she said. "The property owner may remove items purchased with her funds, provided she does so with law enforcement supervision and provides proper documentation." We left the courthouse with legal permission to take back everything that belonged to me. Harrison made some calls, and by noon we had assembled our team at the house. 2 sheriff's deputies were there to keep the peace, along with Harrison, the asset recovery team, and movers. My family was home when we arrived. They must have spent Christmas morning in the cold, dark house, probably still in shock about what had happened the night before. When they saw the sheriff's vehicles and the moving truck pull up, they came rushing outside. "What is this?" Dad demanded. "This is a court-ordered eviction," Harrison said, stepping forward with the paperwork. "You have 72 hours to vacate the premises. However, Ms. Reynolds is here today to recover personal property that was purchased without her authorization." "You cannot do this," Mom said. "Not on Christmas." "You cancelled my son's Christmas," I replied. "You stole his plane tickets to buy a purse. So yes, I can do this. Today." The deputies established a perimeter, while Harrison directed the asset recovery team. I had provided them with a detailed list based on my credit card statements. The team moved through the house, methodically identifying items and checking them against the list. The expensive television in the living room, purchased on my credit card 3 months ago, loaded onto the truck. The new dining room furniture, my card 6 months ago, loaded onto the truck. Leah's designer handbag collection, prominently displayed in her old bedroom, every single one purchased on my cards. All of them loaded onto the truck. The Persian rug that had caused such drama, definitely my card, carefully rolled up and loaded onto the truck. Leah was screaming physically, trying to grab items from the movers. One of the deputies had to restrain her. "You are destroying my life," she shrieked. "These are my things. I need these things." "No," I said calmly. "These are my things. You were just borrowing them without asking." The asset recovery went on for 3 hours. By the time we were done, the house looked like it had been ransacked. The living room was empty, except for an old couch that predated my involvement. The dining room was bare. Most of the kitchen appliances were gone. Even some of the bedroom furniture had been removed. My parents sat on the front porch steps, wrapped in blankets, looking shell-shocked. The neighbors had come out to watch, whispering amongst themselves, some even taking video on their phones. The shame my parents had always been so afraid of, the public humiliation they had wanted to avoid, was happening right in front of them. Before I left, I walked up to where they sat. "You could have just been kind," I said. "You could have loved me, or at least respected me. Instead, you chose this. We did not choose this." Mum said, her voice hoarse. "You did. You are the one tearing this family apart." "No," I said. "You tore us apart years ago when you decided one daughter was worth more than the other." I just stopped pretending it did not hurt. I got into my SUV and drove away from that house for what I knew would be the last time. The movers would take everything to a storage facility where I would decide later what to keep and what to sell. The house itself would go on the market immediately. Harrison had already contacted a developer who was interested in buying the property to tear down and build condominiums. The neighborhood was gentrifying and the lot was valuable. The irony was not lost on me. The house my parents had lived in for 35 years, the house that represented everything they thought they had built, would be erased completely. In its place would rise something new, something that had nothing to do with them or their legacy. Over the next few weeks, things happened quickly. My parents and Leah had nowhere to go. They tried to rent an apartment, but their credit was destroyed. The eviction on their record made it nearly impossible to find a landlord willing to take a chance on them. They ended up in an extended stay motel on the outskirts of town, the kind of place with weekly rates and bedbugs. Leah's husband Derek filed for divorce when he found out about the debt and the eviction. He wanted nothing to do with the chaos she had brought into his life. Leah ended up moving back in with our parents in their cramped motel room, sleeping on a cot, working a job at a grocery store to help pay the bills. I heard all of this through mutual acquaintances and social media, which Leah could not seem to quit despite her circumstances. Her posts had gone from showing off designer bags to vague pleas about hard times and asking for prayers. The contrast was striking. Meanwhile, I filed charges regarding the credit card fraud and identity theft. Harrison walked me through the process, and while I knew it was unlikely to result in jail time, it would create a legal record of what they had done. The bank investigations took months, but eventually I recovered most of the money they had stolen. I also sold the house just as I had planned. The developer paid cash well above market value because of the location. With the proceeds, I bought a beautiful home in a better neighborhood, with a big yard for Liam, a fence for the dog. I promised him we could get, and enough space that we never felt cramped. The months that followed were about rebuilding. I focused on being the best mother I could be to Liam. I took him to therapy to process what had happened with his aunt and grandparents, and I went to therapy myself to deal with years of emotional abuse and manipulation. I excelled at work, earning another promotion and a substantial raise. I traveled less, prioritizing time at home with Liam. We established new traditions, just the two of us. Friday movie nights with popcorn, Saturday morning pancakes, Sunday afternoon bike rides in the park. I made new friends, people who valued me for who I was, rather than what I could provide. I dated occasionally, but I was in no rush. For the first time in my life, I was content being alone, being just me and Liam, building a life based on our own terms. My parents tried to reach out a few times. At first, the messages were angry, accusing me of being heartless and vindictive. When those did not work, they switched to manipulation, trying to guilt me with talk about family and forgiveness. Finally, they resorted to begging, asking for money, for rent, for food, for help. I ignored every message. I had learned my lesson about confusing kindness with enabling. Some people will take everything you give and still demand more. Some people will never appreciate what you do for them because they feel entitled to it. The final message came almost 6 months after the eviction. It was from my mother, sent late at night. The message was short. "I am sorry. Please, just $50 for a motel room tonight. It is so cold. I'm begging you." I read the message while sitting on my couch in my warm, comfortable home. Liam was asleep upstairs, tucked into his bed with his favorite stuffed animals around him. In the morning, we were flying to Hawaii for a vacation, first-class tickets, a beachfront resort, a whole week of nothing but sun and surf and quality time together. I looked at that message for a long time. I thought about the little girl I used to be, desperate for her mother's approval. I thought about the woman I had become, who had survived spite and cruelty and neglect. I thought about my son and the kind of man I wanted him to grow into. Then I blocked the number. The next morning, Liam and I went to the airport. This time there were no cancelled tickets, no locked credit cards, no last-minute disasters. We checked in smoothly, made our way through security, and settled into our first-class seats. Liam pressed his face against the window, watching the ground crew load baggage, his excitement palpable. As the plane began to taxi toward the runway, my phone buzzed one last time. It was an email notification, a message that had come through just before we took off. I almost did not check it, but something made me look. It was forwarded from an old email address sent by my father. The subject line was, "Please reconsider." I did not open it. Instead, I deleted it and turned off my phone. "Mama, look," Liam said, pointing out the window as the plane lifted off the ground. "We are flying." "Yes, we are, baby," I said, taking his hand. "We are flying, and we are never looking back." The plane climbed higher above the clouds into the brilliant blue sky. Below us, Denver grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. Somewhere down there were people who had hurt me, people who had taken me for granted, people who would probably never understand why I walked away. But up here at 30,000 feet, with my son beside me and a future full of possibilities ahead, none of that mattered anymore. I had spent so long being the daughter they wanted me to be, the punching bag, the ATM, the scapegoat. I had given them years of my life, thousands of dollars, and endless chances to do better. And in return, they had given me the greatest gift of all, though they never intended it. They had pushed me so far that I finally learned to push back. They had taken so much that I finally learned to take back. They had hurt me so deeply that I finally learned to walk away. Sometimes the best revenge is not elaborate schemes or legal battles or public humiliation. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, being happy, and refusing to let toxic people steal any more of your peace. So here is what I learned, and here is what I want you to understand if you are in a similar situation. Family is not an excuse for abuse. Love is not supposed to hurt. Loyalty should never be one-sided. And you are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. If the people in your life make you feel small, if they take from you without giving back, if they hurt you and then blame you for being hurt, it is not your job to fix them. It is your job to protect yourself and the people who depend on you. I do not regret what I did. Not the eviction, not the asset recovery, not blocking their numbers and cutting them out of my life completely. Some might call it cruel. I call it survival. And as I sit here on this plane, holding my son's hand, heading toward a week of sunshine and new memories, I can honestly say I have never felt more free. The hardest part about walking away from toxic family is not the walking away itself. It is giving yourself permission to do it. It is overcoming the voice in your head that says, family is family, that you should forgive, that you are the bad guy for setting boundaries. But here is the truth. They do not want you to know. You deserve to be treated with respect. You deserve to be valued. You deserve to have your kindness reciprocated rather than exploited. And if the people in your life cannot or will not give you those things, you have every right to remove them from your life, blood relation or not. My only regret is that I did not do it sooner, that I spent years trying to earn love from people who were incapable of giving it, that I sacrificed so much for people who would never appreciate it. But I do not dwell on that regret because it is part of what made me who I am today, someone who knows her worth, someone who protects what matters, someone who will never again confuse abuse with affection. So to everyone listening to this story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt like the family scapegoat? Have you ever given everything only to be treated like you gave nothing? Have you ever reached that breaking point where you realized that walking away was the only way to save yourself? If this story resonated with you, Please hit that like button, subscribe, because I have more stories about people who found the courage to choose themselves, and comment below about your own experiences. What was your breaking point? What was the moment you realized you deserved better? Because here is the thing, when you finally stand up for yourself, when you finally set boundaries, and refuse to be treated as less than some people will call you selfish, they will say you are cold, heartless, unforgiving. They will tell you that real family would never give up, that you are breaking sacred bonds, that you will regret this someday. But those people are usually the ones who benefited from you having no boundaries. They are the ones who lose something when you gain self-respect, and their opinions about your choices say far more about them than they do about you. I have not spoken to my parents or my sister in over a year now. I do not know where they are living or how they are doing, and I have trained myself not to wonder. Liam asks about them sometimes, and I tell him the truth in age-appropriate ways. Some people are not healthy to have in our lives, even if they are family. We love ourselves enough to only keep people around who love us back. He seems to understand. Children are remarkably resilient when you give them stability and honesty. As for me, I am building the life I should have had all along. A life where I am valued, where my contributions are appreciated, where my son grows up, seeing his mother treated with respect. I am teaching Liam that love is not supposed to hurt, that family is not supposed to make you feel worthless, that it is okay to walk away from people who hurt you. These are lessons I wish someone had taught me when I was young, but I am grateful I learned them in time to teach them to him. So I will end with this. To everyone who has ever been made to feel like they are not enough, to everyone who has sacrificed everything, for people who gave nothing in return, to everyone who is still trying to earn love from people who are incapable of giving it, you are enough. You have always been enough, and you deserve so much better than you are settling for. Walking away is not giving up. It is refusing to participate in your own destruction. It is choosing life over loyalty to people who have shown you none. It is radical self-love in a world that tells you to keep sacrificing, keep forgiving, keep giving. Chances to people who have proven they will waste them. I blocked my mother's number on a plane to Hawaii with my son sleeping beside me, and I have never felt more at peace. Your turn. What would you have done in my situation? Do you think I went too far or not far enough? Tell me in the comments. Hit that subscribe button. And remember, you teach people how to treat you, and sometimes the most powerful lesson you can teach is that you are done being treated badly. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there find the courage to write their own ending